All right, everybody, welcome back to the show with no intro. Art Burns here. Happy to be here with you today. And actually, it's a little bit of a strange day. So I don't know how this just turn on a fan here. I don't know how this episode is going to go today because it's again life is happening, right? And I almost didn't do today's episode, and I'm going to tell you why. As I've mentioned to you, I was actually today just completed an 8-week program of it's kind of a rite of passage, right? About kind of coming back into contact with myself, but also with my ancestors and with the trauma that I've suffered, right? And kind of allowing myself to almost go through a death and a rebirth in a way, right? And this rite of passage is really quite beautiful and quite important, I think. And first of all, I mean, it feels great. I mean, I'm definitely in a little bit of a strange state maybe, but not like, I mean, if you saw me last week or actually just on Tuesday, like my eyes would have been like, puffy from crying. And it's been a really, really difficult journey, but one that's been enormously, extraordinarily helpful. And so today was the last session of this 8-session program. And today was meant to be a celebration, and it feels that way, right? Like I've gone through this really, really difficult, 7 sessions of, an hour and a half each of like, seriously, like blubbering, crying, like really like shaking at times, like going through the most difficult thing that I can remember going through, right? At times, right? And that's the thing, right? That we, and I tell you all this all the time, right? That life is not necessarily meant to be easy, right? Life is not meant to be any certain way, right? Life is just life. As I'm going to read you a passage from this book I mentioned the other day. I read this book, like 2 sittings. It's only like 100 pages. So, in this book, Candide, the lead character, keeps referencing that, his philosopher and mentor friend kept saying that this is the best of all possible worlds, right? And through the saga of this story, if you've ever read it, you know what I'm talking about. And if you haven't, I mean, seriously, it's like 140 pages or something like that. Read it. It's really, really powerful. It was written in like around the time of the French Revolution, It's fascinating to see the truth that was true then is still true today, right? But that is the idea that, throughout this book, like you see, like he goes through, the main character goes through all of these different things, right? Some are really amazing. Like he gets, he winds up in the land of El Dorado. They stumbled upon this land going through a river and an impenetrable entry into this place, and they found themselves in El Dorado. All the riches they could possibly want, literally the ground is made of gold. And they, they took like 17 sheep laden with all of these, diamonds and golds and rubies and emeralds and like enough riches to more than every monarch in the world had at that time, right? And they lost it all. Right. And it's like, and some of it was stolen from them. Some of it was through bad decisions. Some of it was through the sheep literally falling into the water after being stolen by a pirate and stuff like this. And so the idea then, and I'm going to read you the last paragraph from this book, is that, it's all of those difficult things that make our life what it is. Right. That's the thing. Right. Like it's without all of it. Right? Like we can't, like sometimes we feel like, oh, well, if I just like parse out all the happy memories, then I become happy, right? But that's not true. Your happiness is steeped in all the trouble that you went through too, right? And really what this does is this comes down to, well, first, I mean, this is a metaphor for mindfulness, right? And that's, and ultimately what he says, the last line of the book is that we must cultivate our garden, which means that, to me anyway, what it means is that we have to cultivate our authenticity, right? We have to be us. because that's the way it works, right? Like you were born into this world as a being that was really, I mean, there's a bit of a philosophical thing here, right? That this concept of a separate self, right? And Dan Siegel, really, I mention Dan Siegel all the time here, and I'm going to do it one more time today. That he has this beautiful concept of how the self works, and I'm taking this course with him, and in the last class that I attended, this is what he was talking about, which is that, the self, the way I kind of translated was, think of the internet, right? Like you wouldn't consider your computer to be the internet, right? But yet your computer is part of the internet, right? Your computer, it could be said, is like an expression of the internet. Yes, your computer itself is made up of nuts and bolts and transistors and transducers and motherboards and keys and plastic and silicon and aluminum and all that stuff, right? Just like we are made of skin and bone and blood and all the different cellular, structures that create us, right? But your computer, sure, it has some functionality. I mean, you can type a letter on it and stuff, right? But in order for, like in today's day and age, right, it's all about the connectivity that our computer gives us, right? This thing that I'm talking to talk, I'm getting to you through this thing, right? Which is going through this internet, right? So my computer itself is not the internet, but it could be seen as an expression of the internet, right? And so what Dan Siegel was telling, again, Dr. Dan Siegel, author of, over 10 books, I know that, really, really scientifically grounded person, right? Not a woo-woo, kind of hippy-dippy, airy-fairy kind of guy, right? He says that he believes that where modern society has kind of gotten it wrong a little bit and become confused is that we have this sense that this body that I have is the self, right? But this body, and the way Dan talks about it is that he says, and he told me to call him Dan, by the way. I'm not being too familiar. He told me to. I called him Doctor the first time I talked to him. He's like, please call me Dan. I think doctors just love hearing that and saying that. But anyway, what Dan says is that let me think. So in any system, right? In a system, right? Like the internet, your car, your home, a city, right? Any system is really could be defined as different elements kind of interacting with each other, right? And in any system, we have these sort of nodes in which we can sort of see that interaction, right? Some way to measure things, some way to understand it, right? And so that's like the nodes are sort of the expression of the interaction of these elements in the system, right? So for your car, right, it's like you have the system, the different elements of like the exhaust system and the fuel delivery system and the electronic system and the tires, and you have all these different elements that are all interacting with each other to make the car do what it does, to give you the ability to get in and drive, right? And so we can see all this, right? We can see the smoke coming out of the tailpipe. We can hear the rumble of the engine. We can check our tire pressure, right? We can grip the steering wheel, right? But the steering wheel itself is not the car, right? Like you wouldn't call it that, but at the same time, you couldn't have a car without the steering wheel, right? And so that's how Dan kind of describes it in terms of, this body that I have is just an expression of the self that we all share, right? Now, again, this does dip into the woo-woo world, right? Because this is what the woo-woo world has been talking about forever, right? That the idea is that we are all connected. Now, when I say woo-woo, I mean, this is a tenet of Buddhism that's been, talked about for 2,500 years, right? The whole concept of interbeing, right? That without you, there could be no me, right? Thich Nhat Hanh talks about interbeing a lot, and he says like a table. If you look at a table is made up of a lot of non-table elements, right? Like even sunshine and rain, right? Because in order to make that table, there had to be wood. In order for there to be wood, there had to be sunshine and rain. In order for this table, in order for the wood to be converted to a table, a guy had to go out and cut down the tree. And so this table also includes like what that guy had for lunch. and how much his partner loved him and how he felt about himself. That's all in this table, because without any one of these aspects, the table couldn't exist, right? And so that's the same kind of concept that we're talking about with this sense of self, right? That you know, when you experience pain, I experience pain also, not because of your pain. I mean, maybe that's true, but what I'm saying is that pain is common between us, right? You experience pain, I experience pain. So the pain is not yours and the pain is not mine. The pain is part of the self, right? And that's true of any emotions and any, you know, inspirations and any, you know, all of it, right? And so if we are just this expression, right, of the whole self, if you will, right? And again, this is a scientific kind of thing, right? Not just woo-woo, right? There's a basis in, like, a scientist told me about this, right? And so if our body and our, what we call ourself, right, just me, right? If I am just an expression of this greater self, right, then the more of this that I can be, the more true to who I am I can be, the more I kind of become harmonious with the system, right? With the true self that is the greater, you know, humanity, right? The earth, right? Like we're, you know, we're all sharing this earth together, right? But we're not on the earth, we're part of the earth, right? We're part of the biosphere that makes the earth. So without me getting into going off on too many tangents, because I feel like maybe I'm rambling here a little bit, and you can all, you know, get back to me and let me know what you feel about what I'm saying. I would love to get some, you know, comments about this and some questions and start a conversation about this, because the essence of what I'm talking about, the functional, you know, sort of reasoning behind what I'm saying here and why I'm saying this and why I feel it's important, is because what I found is very similar to the idea that I expressed with Candide, is that it's because of all, you know, everything that's happened is what's brought us to this moment, right? And without any single thing, this moment couldn't be, right? It couldn't be exactly like it is right now, right? And that includes, like, everything, right? You've heard of the butterfly effect, right? That like, you know, somebody who maybe, you know, died as a child in Asia, you know, would impact me on some way, because it impacts the whole rippling existence of humanity, right? Because again, we're all just expressions of this humanity, okay? And so in the same way that it's about honoring every bit of the experience, right? Like, it's not about, oh, it's been a good life, or oh, it's been a or it's been a bad life, or oh, I wish things were different, right? Instead of all that, and this is what mindfulness is all about, right? It's about accepting that without any one of these details, it just couldn't be, right? So it's not about whether it's good or bad or preferable or unpreferable. It just is, right? And our job and the way out of our own suffering is to accept that it is just the way it is, and it could not possibly be any other way, right? This is the best possible world, right? It just couldn't be any other way. And so that's one of the things that really troubles most people, or many people. Like the root of the suffering that most people who suffer have is the inability to accept that, right? The desire to somehow change things to be not what they are. Now, that doesn't mean, of course, again, if you feel like you're not well, like, you're allowed to change your habits and your lifestyle so that you become well, right? Like, it's not about not changing things, you know, moving forward, but it's about accepting what is. Because right here, right now, this is what is. And you either have the choice to accept it or resist it. And if you resist it, that's where you're going to suffer. Okay? So in the same way that we can accept and allow life to be what it truly is, and that is the way to end our suffering, the same thing applies internally. And this is what I've really learned, the most powerful lesson that I've learned through the process of these last 8 sessions, 7.5 weeks, is that, right? That it's also about not only just allowing reality to be reality and working in the flow of that reality rather than trying to change the reality, right? The same thing is true internally. That if I can allow myself to be who I truly am, and I can accept that, and I can even celebrate that for all its, foibles and messiness and ugliness and beauty and wonder and all of it, that's where I become aligned with the world around me. And that's where I become really, really powerful, right? Like that's where you cannot mess with me, right? Because I am true to my essence, and that is the most powerful thing that you can be, right? And so of course, one of the reasons I bring this up, and I want to share this with you in a very, for a very important reason, right? Because, first of all, I mean, look, we have, there's statistics that show that, something like 20% of the population has an insecure attachment system to their parents, right? Like I told you yesterday, and 20% of us grow up without that secure attachment. 20%, right? That's a lot, right? We also know that 25%, statistically, 25% of people grow up being abused as children. There's another percentage that grow up as sexual abused children, right? There's, 77% of American adults deal with chronic stress, right? And so there's lots of evidence out there, right, that shows that there's more people out there that are dealing with stuff that I'm dealing with. And I know that there's some of you too, right? Because statistically speaking, if there's 100 of you listening to this, 25 of you have had a similar experience to me in terms of the abuse and the trauma. And why is that important? Well, that's important because when we experience trauma as a result of abuse at the hands of our caregivers, this is very specific here, very important, right? As I said yesterday, I think I said it yesterday, I know I said it recently, that again, right, because I say this a lot, that when we're children, when we're young children, and we're experiencing abuse from our caregivers, and again, abuse does not have to have an intention of harm, right? It can be a loving parent can be abusive. My parents were very loving. My mother showered me with love, but she also abused me. Right. And the thing was that the abuse did not come from this place of like, let me hurt this kid just for the sake of hurting him. The abuse came because she just couldn't handle herself. Right. She wasn't able to regulate. She wasn't able to manage what she was going through. And I think that's tied into what I'm about to tell you. Right. Because, again, the thing about abused children, and again, I think I told you that her father, one time when I was about 11 years old, like he was, thank goodness we lived in a New York City apartment with metal doors with a big metal lock on it, because otherwise my grandfather probably would have really hurt me that night. Like he was pounding on my door trying to break that thing down so that he could get to me and take out his rage on me, right? And I was just a little kid, and I might have been really bodily hurt, right? And more trauma, of course, right? So I don't remember where I was going with that, but the idea here is, right, that when the reason I said that is because it's very likely that my mother grew up in the similar kind of thing that I did, right? Which is when we are abused as children, we're left to make this impossible choice, right? This impossible choice that says that, okay, this person who is supposed to be caring for me is now losing her crap and really hurting me. So I have a choice now to say, either in my young mind, either that my mother is bad and awful and wrong and terrible, which if I believe that as a 5-year-old kid or a 4-year-old kid, I might literally lose my mind. Like I might literally have a psychic break that I never recover from. right? Because that's just at the very core of what it means to be a baby, or even a young child, is to have that mother, right? Or that caregiver, right? Somebody who's looking out for me. And so if I can't possibly look at that person as bad, because then the whole world doesn't make sense to me anymore. So instead, what I do is I say, I'm the one that's bad. It's my fault that this is all happening, which is, of course, what my mother was telling me too, right? And so, she used to tell me that it was my fault that, that she was going to one day go out for a pack of cigarettes and never come back, right? Like that's, but again, that wasn't to just mess with me. That was coming from a place of extreme dysregulation, extreme overwhelm, extreme levels of stress. And so what happens with us who have survived this, horrible choice, is that in that moment, like from that second that I made that choice, like, holy crap, I am bad. I'm broken. I'm wrong. I'm flawed. I'm a disgrace, right? The minute I had that feeling and that thought, I could never be myself again after that, right? Like myself was not good. And I could not allow myself to be who I was. I had to be this person that my mother wanted me to be and my father wanted me to be. And of course, for me, this was reinforced with actual conscious and deliberate language and stuff like that, right? Like my father literally told me that I was stupid for, wanting to play music, like you got to do stuff that's going to move the football kind of thing, and so when we live with trauma, that's what we live with. We live with this feeling that we're not allowed to be who we really are. And that, my friends, is where everything goes wrong. It is my firm belief, having gone through everything I've gone through for the last 10 years now, culminating in this moment where I just had this beautiful, Zoom call feast, right, where we had pictures of my grandparents out, and like they were sitting at the table with us. There's my mother's parents and my father's parents over here. We had a picture of my family out. I had a whole feast, a whole some grapes and some almonds and some a candle that my candle back here was up there. I set it up on the big table. I had all my favorite books out there, including this one, because this really played a role in it, right? And again, like Candide says, right, it's about cultivating our garden. It's about cultivating and coming back to who we are and back to our essence. That's what I've learned, that is the most important thing. That in order for me to be well, let me phrase it this way. Being who I am is my greatest strength. In fact, that is where all of my power comes from, is being completely and unapologetically who I am. And that makes me like you can't hurt me. It's impossible for you to hurt me when I'm dwelling in this essence of who I am. And again, it's like, I'm going to read you this passage in a second. Again, it's the culmination of everything that I've gone through that's created this moment right here, me talking to you, and this having just still digesting the almonds and the grapes from this beautiful little celebration I just had, right, where all my ancestors were present. They were treating me like the king that I am. That's kind of part of the whole thing. But again, just like it's about honoring all the pain and all the difficulty that you've been in your life, right? Honoring that as the reason why you're sitting where you are right now. The same thing is true internally, right? It's because of the difficulty. It's because of the struggle to be who you are, right? And again, if you've experienced life in any kind of way that I have, which is, as an abused person, as I look back, every problem that I had was one of these two things, right? Either not accepting reality for what reality really was, and for not allowing me to be who I really am. that is where all of the suffering that I experienced came from. And this is the culmination of 10 years of work that I'm delivering to you today, right? It's not just like, oh, I got an idea, let me share this with my audience. No. This feels like the most universally important truth that there could ever be, right? And so now let's talk about why this fits in this podcast. I mean, I'm sharing this with you because you're my tribe, and I want you to know what I've been going through. Yeah, that's beautiful. But there's also a lesson here, right? That very much deals with mindfulness practice, and specifically with compassion. Right, I was meeting with one of my clients this morning, a beautiful, wonderful man who's doing just beautiful, wonderful work, and just he's making such beautiful, wonderful progress, and it's inspiring to watch. Just as inspiring as I'm sure it was for Malachi, my guide, in the last 8 weeks. I'm sure that he felt the same thing watching me do the work that I feel watching my guy do the work. I don't want to share his name because I didn't get permission. But you know who you are. You know who you are. And I'm proud of you, dude. I'm really proud of you. And you should be proud of yourself, right? Because again, this is it. This is everything, right? The work that we do is to come to the place where we can accept exactly what's happening as it's happening. And we can come into being who we really are. Right? The authentic self. So let me read you this passage. So again, this comes from, this book is Candide by Voltaire, who is a French author, written in, I believe it's like 1759. Right? The number's right. 1759. These words were penned almost 300 years ago, 250 some odd years ago. That's amazing. 270 years ago, right? So I'm just going to read you literally the last paragraph of the book, right? This is just the notes. So the last paragraph and the last little line here. That's all I'm going to read, okay? Pangloss sometimes said to Candide, quote, "All events are interconnected in this best of all possible worlds. For if you hadn't been driven from a beautiful castle with hard kicks in the behind because of your love for Lady Cunegonde, if you hadn't been seized by the Inquisition, if you hadn't wandered over America on foot, if you hadn't thrust your sword through the barren, and if you hadn't lost all your sheep from the land of El Dorado, you wouldn't be here eating candied citrons and pistachio nuts." "Well said," replied Candide, "but we must cultivate our garden." To me, what that means is that's a microcosm for everything that I just said, right? Because, again, it's about honoring and not just accepting, but accepting in a beautiful, kind, and compassionate way everything we've gone through. He killed a man, and he was almost killed several times. He won the greatest fortune and lost it within days, right? And if all of that hadn't happened, if all of what I went through hadn't happened, if all of what you went through hadn't happened, we wouldn't be sitting here doing this right now, right? And then that last line, I think that's really the key, right? That's we must cultivate our garden. We must cultivate our garden. We must do the things that allow us to be who we are. We must do the things that allow us to be authentically us. So I'm sorry, I know I got sidetracked here. I digress. I just remembered that I was about to tell you what this means in terms of mindfulness and compassion, right? First of all, mindfulness is about being in the present moment, but being in the present moment with a level of active kindness, right? To honoring the softness and the gentleness of the present moment, right? Which doesn't sound the way I talk, but it is, right? And so when we talk about being our authentic self, right? There's one way, in my opinion. Well, I'm sure there's many ways to come to that place, maybe. But there's one sure way that I can tell you definitely, and you might have already picked this out. You might have already know what I'm going to say. It's self-compassion, right? Because in the self-compassion, I can look at myself and I can say, yeah, man, I know it's been hard. It's been really, really hard. And you'd have every right to be hardened and to be bitter and to be angry and resentful. And I know that at times you have been, and that's okay, right? Because I honor who you are, and I honor your quest to become more of who you really are. And it is that self-compassion that allows us to go into that shadow of ourselves, and it allows us to, because that's the boundary, right? The shadow is the boundary, right? That voice of my father telling me that I was stupid for listening to music one time, right? Like, that's the boundary. Like, that makes me feel, oh, I'm stupid. I'm a bad person. I can't go there. Yes, you can. Yes, you can. But the only way to go there is with the support of your own heart. It's the only, well, again, I don't know if it's the only way, but it's a very, very effective way. Well, folks, I'm going to end it here. And I feel like it's complete. And I hope that everything I said made sense. I kind of feel like it maybe didn't so much today. Today was a very weird day. It's not, we're not having a normal anything here, And so I'm not going to do another segment today. I hope that you enjoy this, and I hope you sit with this. And I would love to hear from you. I really would. I would love to hear what you think about what I'm saying in terms of, whether it's the book. Like, what do you think about that last paragraph? And if you've not read the book, read it. And I'd be more than happy to start a book club around this book, right? If anybody's up for that, we can all read it together. I mean, the chapters are like a page each. Like, it's like such an easy book to read. And we could do it, and we can have a discussion. I'd be totally down for that if anybody else is. But I would love to hear from you on this, because it's really, really important. Because who you are is the perfect, the best of all possible yous. But so many times we let that garden become overgrown and decaying and not clean and not cared for, not cultivated, right? We have to cultivate our authentic self, or else we lose it, right? Just like you lose a garden to the weeds, right? And so we must cultivate ourselves. We must cultivate our authenticity. And from there, from that authenticity, that's where our intuition will guide us, and everything will be aligned. I promise you. It's really that simple. It's not that easy, though. And that's where the practice of self-compassion comes in. All right? All right, so I would love to hear from you on this. I would love to know what you think, any questions you have, and all that. All right, I have no idea how long I've been talking, so I hope you got your 30 minutes today. I'll find out in a second. But I believe that I've given you some value here today. So please be patient with me and accept what I've got to give to you today, and know that I'll be back again tomorrow. Okay? All right, everybody. I wish you well. I'll talk to you soon. Take care.